Hello everyone, my name is Kerstin Denike and I'm Professor of Medical Informatics at the Bern University of Applied Sciences. Today I would like to present our work where we try to develop a digital communication aid to support nonverbal communication in pediatric emergency care. And this work is a collaborative project between different groups of our university. Let me start with some motivation. So providing urgent care to migrant children is often hampered due to language barriers. So it's difficult for emergency nurses to communicate with the children, to identify the medical history, also in discussions with the parents, of course, when they are not native speakers or when they are not speaking a language who the nurse is familiar with. So this can lead to misunderstandings or even missing information because the communication is difficult with these person groups. And this in turn can lead to adverse events or other risks of patient safety. There are several communication aids used in these kinds of communication settings. For example, translation apps. So people have been using, for example, Google Translate, or visual dictionaries, so some images to point on for explaining some issues. But these communication aids are of limited utility, as studies showed. Our aim is therefore to develop a nonverbal communication aid for pediatric emergency care, meaning that it should enable nurses in emergency settings to easily communicate with patients, with young patients and their parents when they're not familiar with the language. To develop this tool, this communication aid, we formed an interdisciplinary team of researchers from different areas. So we're originating from communication design, from nursing research, and also from medical informatics. The process we are applying is a participatory design process that uses also prototyping. So we have several iterations where mock-ups are generated, discussed with potential users, and again, adaptations to the mock-ups are performed until we then finally develop the prototype. As a starting point to develop our communication aid, we assessed existing communication apps that are suitable for emergency settings. And on the other hand, we performed the requirement analysis to analyze the communication flow and also to assess the challenges, the barriers that exist in this communication setting. To collect requirements, we distributed questionnaires to emergency departments and we run interviews with nurses. So in particular, we used case examples where we discussed with the nurses which questions they would ask in the interview with the patients and their parents and in which order they would ask the questions. We also asked the nurses for challenges they observed and also on their ideas for features that they would like to see in such a communication aid. The result from the app analysis was that we identified 37 apps that are suitable for communication in emergency settings. Most of these apps are based on a language translator approach, so basically they translate phrases or provide translated phrases in different languages. Most of these apps only use few images, so this is really a limitation of the existing applications. We could not find any tool that only relies on images. So they were always using text and images in combination. When studying the apps in more detail, we learned that the interactions are often very complex and therefore they are not easy to use in stressful environments as we have it in emergency care. 4 of these 37 apps were inspected in more detail. These are Medipicto, Medilink Pro, TipTalk Emergency and Patient Communicator, and we used assessment methodology we developed in previous work, and you can see the result actually here, but I will not go into too much detail, so please have a look at the paper to see what is here shown in these graphs, in these radar graphs. So just to summarize, the problems in these 4 apps are that the content is unstructured, so it's really difficult to find things in a short amount of time. And in particular, they scored poorly in the areas of design and aesthetics. The good thing was that these 4 apps are based on validated content. As requirements, we collected a couple of things. So the nurses wanted to have a simple tool that is quickly available and that should cover the most common situations in emergency care. In particular, the tool should enable a dialogue with both the non-speaking children and also their families. So both should be addressed, not only the parents, but also the children. When utilizing translations, then the tool should cover the most frequently spoken languages. So since we are focusing on Swiss emergency units, the most frequently spoken languages in these settings have to be included when we use words. Then the tool should be based on pictures or pictograms. It should have well and clear designed illustrations, so it should be really representative and clearly understandable what is meant by the pictograms. The content that is distributed or shown in the application should cover the topics of the sample schema. So sample is an acronym for symptoms, allergies, medication, patient data, last events. So it's an interrogation schema actually that is often used in emergency care. The structure of the tool was asked to be flexible and personalizable so that the content can be adapted to address the particular needs of specific patients with a specific condition. So now I show you a first few screenshots from our prototype. So what we did with these requirements and the app analysis was to come up with mock-ups that were discussed with nurses, and we integrated their feedback and started developing our prototype. So here you can see the screenshots from the prototype for the smartphone version of the application. We have a menu that lists specific items like symptoms, accidents, medications, allergies. And by selecting one of these categories, some images will appear. So here you can see, for example, the pictograms for allergies. And now people could select, for example, when someone has an allergy against bees or again a specific meal or whatever. And so we designed also these pictograms to be really representative for the specific symptom, allergy, or whatever. As I mentioned, mock-ups have been assessed by the nurses already. Now the prototype is under development, and the next step is actually to run a study where we try to learn whether these pictograms that have been designed are really understandable by different person groups, also with migrant background. Then we will run user tests and a usability study with our prototype. And afterwards, we are planning to run a study to assess the usefulness of this tool in daily practice. Thank you very much for your attention, and feel free to contact me if you have any questions.